This is Egypt's #1 for hit music, 104.2 NILE FM. Now, NILE FM's AWARE with Adham.
And you know what? Today's episode, we're going to be talking about quite possibly the largest social epidemic here in Egypt, which is sexual harassment. Ebaa from HarrassMap is with me today in the studio. Stick around.
Egypt's #1 for hit music, 104.2 NILE FM, Cairo. NILE FM's AWARE.
Ebaa, welcome on the show. Just a quick reminder, what exactly is HarrassMap?
HarrassMap is the first independent initiative in Egypt to ever work on the issue of sexual harassment. We started in 2010. And our mission is to end society's acceptance of sexual harassment. It's become an epidemic because people think it's normal to harass, and people seem to think it's normal to get harassed. And this is what we want to change.
See, this is one of the things that I really loved about the initiative as a whole. It's not that it's aiming only to end sexual harassment, but it goes a step beyond and says, like, you know, we'd like to end society's acceptance of it. Because even if it stops, the fact that there's people that believe it to be normal or accept it is absolutely atrocious and absolutely unacceptable. I absolutely love that. So, that being said, you guys started off as an online platform, as or no? Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. She's staring at me and saying, like, no, we did not. So how did it start? Tell me.
Okay, so we started in 2010, as I mentioned. We do lots of different things. We basically crowdsource reports on sexual harassment, which means that anyone can report harassment if it happens to them or if they witness it happening at 6069, which is the SMS, or HarrassMap.org. We use these reports to then create campaigns to let people know that harassment is a serious issue in Egypt. We also have communities of volunteers in 15 governorates all over Egypt that use this information, go into their streets, into their own neighborhoods, and convince people to stand up to harassment. Just the way they would if they see a crime of theft, for example, or anything else that they see as unacceptable or as a crime.
You guys have mentioned that you've changed dramatically. You've expanded your operation quite extensively. So tell us a little bit about that. What's going on?
Okay, so when we first started, we had, basically we were the first initiative to ever work on the issue. So we were still trying to define what sexual harassment is and the fact that it exists in Egypt, because people didn't necessarily believe it to be an issue. So a lot of what we were doing at the time is breaking the silence around the issue. What's really changed now is that there's so much dialogue and debate around the fact that sexual harassment is a social epidemic, as you had mentioned, which is a great improvement. So what we're doing is building on this now and taking it a step further and convincing people to take action, whether it's by growing our volunteer base all over Egypt or creating big campaigns. So we're planning in the future to actually have 2 massive nationwide campaigns that would be through media and also on the ground.
Very, very cool. And you've told me before we went into the interview that one of these campaigns you'll be able to talk about. One is quite the big surprise. So let's talk about the one that we can talk about. What is that all about?
Okay, so one of the key issues I mentioned is that people consider sexual harassment almost to be normal. They don't really necessarily treat it as a crime. And unfortunately, not just that. A lot of men seem to think that sexual harassment makes them feel manly. It's something to show off about in front of their friends. So it's not just that it's acceptable, it's that it's cool. So what we're trying to do is to create a massive nationwide campaign through advertising and all through media to convince people that in fact what is cool or what is right or what is aspirational or what should be looked up to is standing up to harassment. So if you see it happen, stand up to it, tell the person that they should not harass, that it's not acceptable.
What do you say to people that say, because it is an argument, well, it's the girl's clothes and how she dresses that is inviting of sexual harassment and that she wants to be sexually harassed. What do you say to that?
That's absolutely not true because, well, I need to throw some statistics at you, unfortunately.
Okay, hit me.
So this year, UN Women did a study on sexual harassment to try to quantify the issue. And 99.3% of the women surveyed said that they were sexually harassed.
Okay, don't hit me.
These are basically, that's 50% of your entire Egyptian population because Egypt is split 50-50 between male and females. So basically, these women included non-veiled, veiled, and munaqqabat, so like, you know, people are veiled from top to toe, and yet they had not been, released from this crime. So it's really indicative of the fact that dress is not what leads harassment to happen.
Okay, but what is that? Because, I mean, right now you just kind of killed the entire theory altogether that the dress code is what invites it. But now there's another thought in my mind. If 99.9 or 0.3% of women admit to being sexual, that's basically the entire female population. That means it happens to everyone. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about my sister. I'm talking about your mother. I'm talking about my friend's fiance. I'm talking about whoever's listening right now. The women in your family, they're being sexually harassed on the streets.
Absolutely.
Is that the case?
That is the case. That is absolutely the case. The problem is because there's still so much shame and taboo attached to the topic, then a lot of women don't admit that they're being sexually harassed, or they don't talk, or they don't talk to the men in their family about it, or the men in their family are in denial about it. So there's this, there's a psychological barrier that men harassers who are able to put up, which is when I harass this alien from outer space on the street, this person is anywhere close to where my family or friends or loved ones are, or don't represent them. Whereas in fact, it could just be any one of them.
Exactly. It actually is. Pretty much.
Absolutely most likely that all of the women they know have been sexually harassed or assaulted.
What are men doing about this, and how does this affect men? And if the entire female population is being sexually harassed, doesn't mean that the entire male population is doing some harassment, or is it just a handful of people that are taking this upon themselves to harass everyone? I mean, this is a 9 to 5, really. It's a full-time job doing this.
Yeah, well, in a 2008 study, actually 67% of the males surveyed admitted to harassing. And if you talk, you'll see a lot in media now when there are interviews with men on the street, they're very happy to openly say that they do harass. So yeah, unfortunately, a big chunk of the male population do sexually harass, although there are also a lot of men who volunteer with us. 50% of our volunteers are men.
Hallelujah for that.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Also, men really suffer from this because some men do get sexually harassed. We sometimes get reports of men being harassed. Boys in schools get harassed all the time. So that's a really big issue. And also, men who don't harass have to walk down the street and avoid walking face to face with a woman because, women always assume that a man coming in her direction is probably a harasser. So they have to cross the road or stop smiling in someone's face or stop making eye contact because it's just become unbearable to have a normal human connection with anyone.
Thank you for mentioning it. I actually tried helping a woman on the street the other day, and the first response from her was fear. Like, I'm trying to help you, lady, but it was fear. And based on the statistic that you just cited, now I really can't blame her for being afraid of anything male walking down the street. All right, unfortunately, I have to wrap things up because that's all the time we have on this edition of NileFM's Aware. It was a pleasure having Ebaa here with me in the studio talking about sexual harassment from this viewpoint of HarrassMap as an initiative. Are you still optimistic based on what's going on? You told me some information that's quite scary. Are you still hanging in there? Is there a solution?
We're very much hanging in there. Yes, it's quite bleak in the sense that I really believe we are reaching a tipping point here. Not only on daily harassment, but you also, I'm sure, have heard of mob sexual assault in Tahrir,
Yes.
And in 1 week we had 186 cases of mob sexual assault in Tahrir in July 2013. So really, stuff has to be done about this now. Otherwise, you're going to find mob assault happening on every street corner in Egypt.
Well, you're talking about how people, something has to be done. Can the population, can a person like me get involved?
Absolutely. There's so much to be done. First of all, girls should not be silent anymore. You can definitely respond to harassment in so many different ways. You can report it to HarrassMap at 6069. That really helps us campaign against it. You can, turn around and respond to the harasser. You can file a police report. You can tell others in your family this is happening to you so that they realize that this really is a social epidemic reaching everyone. You can volunteer with us. Just go to our website or at harassmap.org or our Facebook page at facebook.com/HarrassMap Egypt and volunteer with us. If you're walking down the street and you see harassment happening, don't stop at it. Say something to the harasser. Try to intervene and make it unacceptable that this is going on in your own neighborhood or in the street that you're walking down.
The one thing that I would add to that is do not engage in violence, because that's not something that we're advocating.
This is
but
not
maybe
what we're
strike
advocating.
up a conversation or file a police report or try to offer some assistance to the girl that's being victimized by this heinous action. Ebaa, I can't thank you enough for all the hard work and all of the effort that you guys are putting in HarrassMap. I personally, the minute we're walking out of this studio, I'm going to be talking to you about how I can get involved in any way, shape, or form. But that's it from us. Thank you very much for tuning in. That was NileFM's Aware for this Saturday. We'll catch you next week with another group of individuals doing everything that they can to give back to the community.